between a hazard and a risk?
Nope, not yet.
Today's your lucky day. Because today I'm going to explain to you why it is important to understand risk and hazard in the workplace and how to control them. So good morning, my name is Brodie. I'm presenting this PowerPoint presentation to you today here in the lounge room on the 23rd of February, and the time is currently 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm currently working as a HR manager and have been doing this role for 2 years. So working through risk and assessing them is something that I do. So in front of you is a pen and a copy of the presentation slides. So beside each slide you'll have a notes section which you can write down some comments or whatever, or questions as we go through them. So if you have any questions, we'll answer them at the end of each slide. Otherwise, if you don't understand anything, just feel free to yell out. Okay, so let's try and understand what the risks and hazards are within the workplace. So today, the purpose of this presentation is to get you to understand the difference between a hazard and a risk. So we'll go through distinguishing the differences between a hazard and a risk, what risks and hazards are in the workplace, how to do risk management assessment and why it is important to complete in the workplace, and when a risk management assessment should be done. So in this presentation, I'm going to focus on these 4 points. Of these 4 points of understanding a hazard and a risk and how they are different, what they are in the workplace, why and how you should assess and manage identified risks, and when they should be completed. So, bit of a flow chart there. Okay, so what is the difference between a hazard and a risk? Let's get into it. So a hazard is a source or a situation with the potential to cause you harm in terms of injury or ill health, damage to property, damage to the environment, or a combination of these. So some hazards that are in the workplace are things like biological, so viruses, bacteria, insects, animals, etc. You've got chemical, so hazardous substances that can cause you harm. These can both harm you physically and also your health. So you've got physical as well, so these are environmental factors that can harm an employee without necessarily touching them. You have safety, so these are things that create an unsafe working environment. Economic, so this can be the result of physical factors that result in injuries. And finally, physiological, which including those that have an adverse effect on an employee's mental health and well-being. Okay, so a risk is the chance, high or low, that these hazards will cause somebody harm and the danger these situations may pose. The level of the risk reflects the likelihood of the unwanted event and the potential consequences of these unwanted events. So some examples of risks in the workplace are things like damage to bodies, muscles and joints, reduced well-being, burns and broken bones, hearing damage, skin irritation, and breathing problems or getting sick. There's many more, so these are just to name a few. Any questions so far?
No, thank you.
So now we know what the difference is between a risk and a hazard and what they are in the workplace. So now it's time to find out what risk management and risk assessment is. So risk management is a proactive process that helps you be able to respond to changes and facilitate continuous improvements within the business. This process needs to be planned, systematic, and cover all possible foreseeable hazards and their associated risks. So there are 4 steps in managing risk in the workplace. So you have step 1, which is to identify the hazard. So you find out what will cause the harm. Step 2 is to identify the hazard. Step 2 is to assess the identified risk. So you understand the nature of the harm that could be caused by this hazard, how serious the harm could be, and what the likelihood of this is from happening. So step 3 is to control this risk. So you implement an effective control measure and ensure it remains effective over time. And finally, step 4 is to review control measures. So this is to ensure that they are working as planned. Okay, so when should you work through the risk management process? So you should work through the process when events occur, such as starting a new business, expanding existing businesses, when there is change in work practices, procedures, or the work environment, any changes to job roles in the company, when introducing new workers, purchasing equipment for the company, working with a new supplier, responding to workplace incidents, and responding to concerns raised by our workers. So now we can discuss what the benefits are of risk management. So these are things like it improves worker health and safety, improves productivity, prevents and reduces injury in the workplace, improves quality of work, easier to identify potential issues, minimises surprises, and finally improves communication within the company. Okay, so finally, to sum up this presentation, we have learned the difference between hazard and a risk, with a hazard being the source of a situation that has the potential to cause you harm, such as viruses, animals, hazardous substances, and a risk is being the chance, being high or low, that these hazards would occur to cause someone harm or put them in a dangerous situation. So some examples of risks in the workplace are things like reduced well-being, broken bones, getting sick, and the list goes on. So to prevent these risks and hazards from occurring in the workplace, you will do risk management, which is a proactive process that helps you respond to changes. What to do when a hazard is identified and also makes improvement within your organisation. So you would do this when you would open a new business, when there is change in the work practices, introducing any new workers, etc. So to complete a proper risk management, there are 4 steps. So again, step 1 is to identify the hazard. Step 2, assess the identified risk. Step 3, control the risk. Step 4, review control measures. So there are many benefits of doing risk management process, which is to improve worker health and safety, prevents injury within your workplace, and also promotes worker health and well-being, and just an all-over safer environment. So tomorrow, when you get back to work in the afternoon or in the morning, or whenever you can, I want you to identify a potential hazard and identify its risk, and then complete the risk management process. And then I want you to either email me and let me know how you went. I'll also follow you up if I don't hear from you. I'll give you my email address at the end of the presentation. Okay, so that almost concludes today's presentation. Are there any questions so far?
Yeah, I've got a question. Generally, who would perform the risk assessment?
Who would perform a risk assessment? So generally your employer would perform a risk assessment within your workplace. So it is their responsibility to ensure that these are carried out. They can also appoint an individual in the company if they wish to carry out these assessments on their behalf. They need to be competent in doing so, and they also need to be supervised as well at the end.
Okay. Another question. What if I identify a risk? What's the procedure?
So if you were to identify a risk in the workplace, you would report it to your manager, either by writing or having a meeting with them. Just let them know what you found, and they will go on and continue, and they will do their risk assessment.
Okay. One more. What is the most effective control option when a hazard or risk has been identified? What is the most effective control option when a hazard or risk has been identified?
Yep, good question. So the most effective control measures are ranked from level 1 to 3. So level 1 is to eliminate the risk, which is the most effective, obviously. Step 2 is to change the risk to reduce it. And then finally, step 3 is to change the way that people behave or their exposure to the risk, which this option is generally the least effective. So yeah, once you've done your risk assessment, you'll be able to identify which level you'll be on to reduce it or eliminate it. Okay, so
I think
does
that's
that answer all your questions?
Yep.
Yep. Okay, cool. Right, so that concludes today's presentation. I will hand out a feedback form to you. If you could please fill this out for me and hand it back before you leave today, that would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed the presentation and you feel informed. Now you know the difference between a risk and a hazard.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.